Thank you for being here with us at the interview. So, how has been your experience here in Puerto Rico?
Oh, it's been wonderful. This is my second trip to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And to me, I've had the opportunity the last 3 days to spend time with pastors and leaders. We had a 3-day conference where we had about 125 leaders come together. And I learned so much just being with these men and women of God, and it's obvious. It is so obvious that God is doing something very unique in Puerto Rico right now, and just to be a part of it and come down here and interface with the leaders in these churches, it's just been absolutely incredible.
Great. So, how did you get started with the ministry with Golden Nation?
Well, that's quite a story. I started off with a very rough background. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and by the time I was 27 years old, my life was a total mess. I stumbled into a church in 1978, and I was 27 years old, and received the Lord. I heard the gospel message, and from that point, the day that I received the Lord, the pastor of that church took me under his wing and made me his Timothy. And so everything he did, he took me with him. I mean, I can remember when I was 2 weeks old in the Lord, I was going on visitation with him and going out and praying for the sick and things like that. So I'm actually a product of the local church. A year and a half later, I was a year and a half old in the Lord, I went on a short-term missions trip. And I went to Mexico. I had the opportunity where I actually received an invitation from 2 different ministries. So I went down to the Veracruz area in Mexico and worked with one ministry that was in very remote indigenous areas where we were going up into the mountains, ministering to a lot of tribal groups. This was incredible for me. It was eye-opening. Because see, I'm still really kind of like a new Christian. I can remember they took me up in the mountains to this one Indian village. The men in the village had to chop a path through the jungle for 3 days so that we could get four-wheel drive vehicles into their village, because they were told that if we can get the vehicles in, we'll show a movie. And a movie they've never seen. It was like magic. These were Indian people that were about 4 foot tall. I've never seen anything like it. The men couldn't grow beards. They were all smooth-faced. You know, the women had never been out of the village. They never leave the village. The men are the only ones that go into town. They'd never seen a person with blonde hair. I had long white hair at that time. I had some hair at that time. You know, I had a big beard at that time. They'd never seen a beard. They'd never seen blue eyes. They'd never seen long hair, white hair.
Wow.
The children would come up to me and they just wanted to touch me to see if I was real, that type of thing. You know, as a new Christian, that was just, it was an incredible experience. I went from there to another ministry that was in Mexico City. This was totally different. This was in a total urban area. That's where I started preaching. We were going to home groups, or, you know, where there'd be about 40, 50 people packed into a house. I remember we were driving to one of these meetings one night, and the missionary said, "By the way, you're preaching tonight." I said, "What do you mean I'm preaching? I've never preached in my life." And he says, "Well, you're preaching tonight." And I said, "I only know 2 scriptures." He says, "Well, then you know what you're going to preach on tonight." And so that's how I really got started. But I knew God confirmed in just some powerful, powerful ways that it would take a long time to share. But I knew when I came back from that missions trip that I was called to be a missionary. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew that I was called to be a missionary. And that's very common. About 80% of all missionaries on the field today receive their missionary call while they're on a short-term trip. So, but being a year and a half old in the Lord, I knew I needed to go back and be faithful in my local church. And I was there for another 5 years. And really, I'm a product of the local church. This is why I love the local church so much. I love pastors. To be able to come to Puerto Rico and work with the pastors and leaders in Puerto Rico. See, this is my dream. And this is what I do in countries around the world.